Shabbat Shalom, everyone. All of you many people that are here tonight. I think our minion numbers just walked through the door. Yes, we're good. We have a minion. All right. So you probably noticed I'm not Rabbi Bloom. The rabbi and the Rebbitzin are in Ohio right now for their oldest son Micah's college graduation. So big mazel tov to the Bloom family. And I understand Micah actually already has a job lined up, so very exciting, all good stuff. So he will be back next week. All right, we will start on page 3, Lechu Neranana. Lechu Neranana, Neranana, Ladonai Naria, Naria, Letzur Yishenu. Lechu neranana, neranana, ladonai, naria, naria, letzur yishenu, nekad mafanav, betoda, bizmirot naria lo, ki el gadol, Adonai, umelech gadol, Lechu neranana, neranana, ladonai, naria, naria, letzur yishenu. Lechu neranana, neranana, ladonai, naria, naria, letzur yishenu. Page 5, Shiru Ladonai. Shiru Ladonai, Shir Hadash, Shiru Ladonai, Kol Haaretz, Shiru Ladonai, Barechu Shemo, Basru Miyom Liyom Yeshuato, Sapru Vagoyim Kevodo, Bechol Ha'amim Nithlotav, Ki Gadol Adonai, Umulo Me'od, Norahu, Al Kol Elohim, Yai Dai Dai, Ki Kol Elohe, Ha'amim Elilim, Vadonai Shamayim Asa, Hod V'Hadar Lefanav, Oz V'Tiferet B'Mikdasho, Havu Ladonai Mishpechot Amin, Havu Ladonai Kavod Va'oz, Havu Ladonai Kevod Shemo, Se'u Mincha, Rotav, Haidai, Ishtachavu Ladonai, Behadrat Kodesh, Chilu Mipanav Kol Haaretz, Imu Vagoyim Adonai Malach, Avtikon Tevel, Baltimot, Yadinamim B'Meshrarim, Yismechu Hashamayim B'Tagel Haaretz, Hiram Hayam Umlo Ya'alo Sadai V'chol asher bo Lai Az Yiranenu Kol Atzeyar Lifnei Adonai Kiva Lishpot Haaretz Yishpot Tevel B'Tzedek Ve'amim Be'emunato Ladai 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 Ladai. All right, Romemu, page 12. Romemu Adonai. lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lehar kodsho. All right, page 13, Psalm 29, Mizmor LeDavid. Mizmor LeDavid, havu l'Adonai b'nei Elim, havu l'Adonai, kavod va'oz, havu l'Adonai kevod shemo, yishachavu l'Adonai b'hadrat kodesh, kol Adonai al hamayim el hakavod kirim, Adonai al mayim rabim, kol Adonai ba'koach, kol Adonai behadar, kol Adonai shover arazim, v'yishaber Adonai et arzei Lebanon, v'yarkidem kemo egel Lebanon, v'Sirion kemo ben re'emi, kol Adonai chotzev lahabodesh, kol Adonai yachil midbar, yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, kol Adonai yechol el hayalot, vayechesov ye'arot uv'hechalot, kulo omer kavod, Adonai lama bu yashav vayeshev, Adonai melech leolam, Adonai yos le'amo yitein, Adonai yivarech et amo b'shalom. Page 15, Lecha Dodi. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Hishmiyanu el hameyuchad, Adonai echad u'shumo echad, L'shem tiferet v'litila lecha dodi, likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki hi makor ha'beracha, merosh mikedem nesucha, sof ma'aseh b'machashava tehila lecha dodi, likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Bottom of 17. Yaminu smol tifrotzi, ve'et Adonai ta'aritzi, al yadish ben partzi, v'nismecha v'nagila lecha dodi, likrat kala, Panei Shabbat nekabela, lecha dodi, likrat kala, Panei Shabbat nekabela. We rise and face the entrance to greet the Sabbath bride. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam b'simcha u'b'tzohala, toch hamunei am segula, boi chala, lecha dodi, likrat kala, Panei Shabbat nekabela, lecha dodi, likrat kala, Panei Shabbat nekabela. And to any mourners in our midst, we say Hamakom Yenachem Etchem B'toch Sha'ar Avle Tzion Yerushalayim. All right, you may be seated. Page 19. Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat Tov Lehodot LaAdonai Ulzamer L'Shimcha Elyon Ulzamer L'Shimcha Elyon Lahagid Baboker Chastecha Ve'emunatcha Balelot Alei Asor Ve'alei Navel Alei Gayon Bechinor Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat Tov Lehodot LaAdonai Ulzamer L'Shimcha Elyon Ulzamer L'Shimcha Elyon. We continue silently to the bottom of page 20. Tzadikata Amar Yifrach Ka'erez Balmanon Yizkei Shetulim Bebeit Adonai Bechatzrot Eloheinu Yafrichu Od Yanumun B'Seira Deshenim Verananim Niyu Lehagid Ki Ashar Adonai Zuri Velo Page 21, Psalm 93. Adonai malach ra'ut lavesh Adonai osita zar, avtikon tevel ba'al timot, nechon kisecha me'az me'olam ata, naseu naharot Adonai, naseu naharot kolam, yiseu naharot doch yam. Mikol mayim, mayim rabim adirim, Mishpareyam, Adibamarom, Adonai, Edotecha, Ne'enu me'od, Levetecha nava, Kodesh Adonai, Leorech Yamin. Please rise, page 22 for the Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, Le'olam Va'ed. You may be seated. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher b'dvaro ma'ariv arabim. Orayom v'layla golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or, u'ma'avir yom u'medi layla, Umavdil ben yom u'ben layla, Adonai tzavot shamo. El Chai V'Kayam Tamid Yimloch Aleinu Le'olam Va'ed Baruch Atah Adonai Hama'ari V'Arabim. Page 24. Ahavat Olam. Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael Amcha Ahaveta Amcha Ahaveta Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu limadeta Otanu limadeta Al Kain Adonai Eloheinu b'shachmeinu Hukumeinu nesiach bechukecha V'nizmach b'divrei Toratecha U'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed Ki chen chayenu Ve'orach yameinu Uvahem negei yomam v'layla Negei yomam v'layla Ve'ahavatecha al tasir Mimenu le'olamim Baruch atah Adonai Ohev amo Yisrael Ohev amo Yisrael Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha B'chol levacha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha Ve'hayu הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת אמת באמונה כל זאת וקיים עלינו. Page 32. U'malchuto v'ratzon kiblu aleichem Moshe b'nei Yisrael echad u'shira b'simcha rabah ve'amru kulam Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh Norati lo rosef elet Norati lo rosef elet Ma'alechutecha ra'u banecha Bokei hayam lifnei Moshe Ze Elianu ve'amru Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed V'ne'emar Ne'emar kifed Adonai ad Yaakov, ugalo miyad hazak mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. Page 33. Hashkidenu Adonai, Eloheinu leShalom, ve'hamidenu Malkeinu lechaim. Hashkidenu Adonai, Eloheinu leShalom, ve'hamidenu Malkeinu lechaim. Ushmor tzeiteinu, uvoenu, lechaim u'shalom, me'ata v'ad olam. Hashkidenu Adonai, Eloheinu leShalom, ve'hamidenu Malkeinu lechaim. Ufrosalenu Sukkot Shlomecha, Baruch atah Adonai, Aparei Sukkot Shalom Aleinu, ve'akol Amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. Please rise for Vishamru. Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asod et ha-Shabbat ledorotam b'rit olam. Ve'ni uvein b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam, oti le'olam, oti le'olam. Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asod et ha-Shabbat ledorotam b'rit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz, veshamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asod et ha-Shabbat ledorotam b'rit olam. Ubayom hashki'i Shabbat b'nafash, Shabbat b'nafash, Shabbat b'nafash. Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asod et ha-Shabbat ledorotam b'rit olam. Page 35, Chatzi Kaddish. Yikadal ve'yikadash Shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divrah hirtei yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uv'yomechon, uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, bagala, uv'izman karib, v'yimeru. Yehi Shmei Rabbah mevorach, le'olam u'al me'amaya, yitbarach ve'yishtabach, ve'yitpa'ar v'yitromam yitnaseh, ve'yithadar ve'yitaleh ve'yitalal, Shemei de'kudesha b'richu, le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, Tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma, v'yimeru. Amen. Silent Amidah, beginning on page 37 and ending on page 48. is a brief repetition of the tefillah of the Amidah on page 49. Vayachulu hashamayim v'haaretz v'chol tzibam vaychal Elohim bayom hashvi melachto asher asa vayishlot bayom hashvi mikol melachto asher asa vayvarech Elohim et yom hashvi vaykadesh oto ki bo Shabbat mikol melachto asher bara Elohim la'asod Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotinu Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah El Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon, K'manei Shamayim Ba'aretz Magen Avot Bidvaro Mechayei Metim B'ma'amaro Ha'el HaKadosh She'ein Kamohu Aminiach Le'amo B'yom Shabbat Kodsho Ki Vam Ratzah Le'aniach Lachem Ki Vam Ratzah Le'aniach Lachem Lefanav Na'avod B'yirah v'pachad V'nodeh Lishmo B'chol Yom Tamid Ma'in habrachot El hahoda'ot Adon HaShalom Mekadesh HaShabbat U'mvorech Shavi U'meniach B'kedusha Le'amikdush Ne'oneg Zecher L'maaseh L'maaseh Bereshit Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu Retzeh B'mnuchatenu Kadshenu b'mitzvotecha V'tein chalkenu b'toratecha Sabenu mitubecha V'samchenu b'shuatecha V'taher libenu Le'avdecha be'emet V'hanchilenu Adonai Eloheinu Be'ahava u'beratzon Shabbat kodshecha Ve'anu v'Yisrael Mekadesh Shamecha Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. Page 53, Kaddish Shalom. Yikadal v'yikadash Shemei Rabbah Ve'yamad v'rachmete v'yamlich malchuteh V'chayechoni v'mechoni v'chayedeho Beit Yisrael V'agalu v'zman kariv v'yimaru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah mevorach Le'olam u'almei almaya Yitbarach Yitbarach v'yishavach v'yitpar v'yitramah v'yinaseh V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalol Shemei nekudesha Brechu Le'elam yikol birchata v'shivrata Tushbachata v'nechemata Da'amiran v'yalma v'yimaru Titkabal tzilton v'hutan v'ol Yisrael Kodam v'vohan v'yishmaya v'yimaru Amen. Yehi Shalom Rabbah min Shemaya V'chaim Elenu v'yakol Yisrael v'yimaru Amen. Osei Shalom v'yibrama V'yah Osei Shalom Elenu v'yakol Yisrael V'yakol Yoshvei Tevel v'yimaru Amen. All right, you may close your siddur momentarily. It's time for the drash. So I'm going to talk for a little bit about rules. Anybody who knows me knows that I love rules. I don't necessarily follow them 100% of the time, but if there's a rule, I'm definitely interested in learning it. Whether it's related to etiquette or corporate policy, grammar, and in particular Judaism, I just like to learn all the rules. If I break a rule, I want it to be because it was intentional, not because I wasn't aware that that rule existed. So aren't I lucky? Because in Judaism, we have a lot of rules. We have 613 of them to be exact. And our rabbis break these rules, or mitzvot, into two main categories, chukim and mishpatim. So there are the mitzvot that make sense from a logical standpoint. These are the mishpatim. So these are the rules that would be agreed upon by most cultural groups and most legal systems, and they relate to ethics, moral behavior, social justice. Some examples that we're going to read in tomorrow's Torah portion: judge your kin fairly, love your fellow as yourself, do not wrong a stranger in your land. These are rules that make rational sense to most, and it's kind of hard to argue against them. Then we get into the weirder rules. So we talked about the mishpatim that make sense. The others are called chukim, and these are the rules that don't really make any logical sense, and it's difficult to find any ethical reason to follow them other than the fact that they're recorded in the Torah. These are purely religious rules. The classic example of this, Shatnez, comes from this week's Torah portion. Shatnez is a much lesser known mitzvah where you're prohibited from wearing clothing made of both wool and linen. And just as a brief survey, who here has heard of that mitzvah before? Okay, so a couple people have. It says in Leviticus 19:19, you shall not put in cloth from a mixture of two types of materials. So this is so important, it actually gets repeated later on in Deuteronomy, which is where we find out the two materials are wool and linen that we're not supposed to mix. So what's the deal with this? I mean, how could this possibly matter if you wear clothing made of wool and linen? So separation and boundaries are what come to my mind, because those are really important in Judaism. You can have Shabbat and all sorts of different things like that, but this is just a really hard one to deal with. So our sages have a few explanations. Rambam tells us that idolatrous priests wore clothes that were made of both linen and wool. And there's also this comparison with Cain and Abel. So if you remember, Cain and Abel each made their own sacrifice. And the one that Cain made was flax, from which linen is made, and Abel's was from wool. So that's why it's inauspicious to mix the two. But still, those don't really explain it, you know. However, an observant Jew will actually never trust the 100% wool label. There are actually Shatnez experts that will examine clothing at a microscopic level to make sure that this mitzvah is being followed. Some other examples of chukim are the laws of the red heifer and kashrut. Maybe you can justify some of the kashrut rules from a health or ethical perspective, but even that's kind of hard. Some more from tomorrow's Torah portion that are other chukim are the rules relating to growing peot and not growing more than one type of seed in a field. So interestingly, the Torah uses two different verbs when referring to these two different types of mitzvot. We're told to guard mishpatim and to do chukim. So why do we have different verbs for these? We guard mishpatim because we're not the only religious or cultural group to observe these types of laws. Many of us follow the mishpatim in our day-to-day lives without having any conscious religious connection. They're not really difficult to follow largely. So that's why we have to guard them. Conversely, we do chukim because the sages have said that with these seemingly illogical rules, the challenge is just doing these at all without understanding why we're doing them. We're supposed to accept them, not because they make sense and convey a benefit that we can understand or feel good about, but because they're of divine decree. They're incomprehensible and sometimes even irrational, like Shatnez. These are the rules or mitzvot that most people detest following because there is no why. Some sages, however, challenge the division of mitzvot and claim they're all incomprehensible, even the ones that make logical sense. Every mitzvah has both of these elements, the logical and the divine. We might think we understand the logic on the surface, but the true meaning is not really known to us. In the words of the Tanya, the rationales of the mitzvot have not been revealed, for they are beyond reason and understanding. Also, in those instances in which there has been revealed and explained a certain reason which is apparently comprehensible to us, this is not the ultimate reason. For within it is contained an inner, sublime wisdom that is beyond reason and understanding. The human mind wants to find logic in everything. We're taught that each of the 613 mitzvot have a benefit and a reason. So it's completely healthy and rational for us to try to pick them apart and understand why they're there and what the meaning is. Because giving yourself over to something you don't fully understand feels unsettling. So while you may not love rules in the same way that I do, you can see why doing Hukim is showing ultimate trust and faith. Maybe Hukim and all the mitzvot are Hashem's version of do it because I told you so, which is a line I use with my kids a lot. Or maybe it's because we're fulfilling a divine purpose that we just can't yet see. Shabbat Shalom. Baruch Tiyeh. All right. We now turn to Kiddush, page 55. Oh, please rise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodshecha b'yahva b'ratzan hinchilanu, zikaron l'maaseh b'reishit, ki hu yom techila l'mikvah kodesh, zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim, ki banu b'harta, ve'otanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, ve'shabbat kodshecha, ve'ahava u'ratzon, hinhaltanu, baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. L'chaim. All right. And we have at least one parent-child group here, so we will bless the children. Speaking of rules, I always say this blessing even when my kids aren't with me, and I've never known if that counts or not, but I think it's nice to say. All right, for boys, we say, Yisimcha Elokim K'Ephraim B'chim Menashe. For girls, Yisimech Elokim K'Sarah Rivka Rachel Leah. And for all, Yivarechacha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ye'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. Amen. All right, now, I wrote a note to myself to remember to count the Omer. So please remain standing. And I have, I'm going to have to do my best to read it because I only have the actual correct way to say it for the 20th day, which I'm not really supposed to say what day it is until we say the bracha. Speaking of rules again, but I'm going to do my best, and it's probably grammatically going to be incorrect, but I will also say in English. We count the Omer on page 273, or at least that's where the bracha is. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu al sifirat ha'omer. Hayom esrim ve'echad, yom shechem shnei shavuot, v'shisha yamim la'omer. Today is the 21st day of the Omer. All right, please stay standing for Eleni, page 57. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon ha'kol, l'tikvu l'yoser b'reshit, shelo asanu k'nui ha'aratzot, velo zamanu k'mishpachot ha'adamah, shelo samlam k'nikonem, v'kol aleinu k'kol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishalim modim, Lifnei melech malchei hamachim hakadosh baruch hu, shehu notei shamayim v'yoser haaretz, u'moshe yikaro b'shamayim imam, u'shchinatu zo v'govei meromim, hu Eloheinu Torato, Ve'adata Hayom Behashavata, Elevavecha, Ki Adonai Hu HaElohim, Bashamayim Imam, Ve'al ha'aretz Mitachat Einod Einod. Kakatu v'toratecha Adonai yimlach le'olam va'ed, v'ne'emar v'chaya Adonai le'melech al kol ha'aretz, v'yom hahu yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad. You may be seated. This Shabbat, we lovingly recall the memory of our departed relatives and friends whose yahrzeit we observed during the week of, this is definitely not the correct week because it says 65 to 12 IR, and that's not a date. So I will read the list now, and I apologize in advance if I mispronounce anyone's relative. Herman Adler, Janet Blackner, Harry Broff, Francis Cohen, Bernard Fogel, Bernard Freymark, Henry Isaac Friendly, Ida Gvertz, Al Gvogig, David Gross, Anna B. Gurman, Hannah Herfield, Thomas F. Hoffman, Anna Cass, William Klinger, Solomon Clore, Leah Lampart, Ella Morrison, Noah Nathan, Benjamin Paul, Benjamin Bramo, Nathan Rosenblatt, Linda B. Rosenthal, Gittel Rothblatt, Hannah Rubin, Odo Schweid, Faye Young, and George Zuckerman. Recent passings are Kevin Romero, brother of Roberta Maslia, and Janet Gordon, mother of Kathy Burge. For all of those who are observing a yahrzeit or whose custom it is to do so, we rise and recite the Kaddish on page 61. Yikadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbah, ve'almad divra chirutei, ve'almich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yamechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'bizman kariv b'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'al me'almaya, yitvarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei d'kudashah b'richu. La'ela mikol berchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, da'amiran v'alma b'imru amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al Yisrael b'imru amen. Osei shalom b'imramav, v'yasei shalom aleinu v'al Yisrael b'imru amen. And may their memory be a blessing. All right, a couple of announcements. Services tomorrow at 9:30. If you had fun tonight, I'm leading again tomorrow, so there's just more fun to be had. The rabbi will be back next week. So we have morning minyan at 8 a.m. Monday and Thursday next week in the chapel. I understand a lot of the regular attendees are out of town, so if you are able to attend, that is an important mitzvah because it allows people to say Kaddish. So that's Monday and Thursday morning at 8. The last day of Beit Sefer, Tuesday, May 10th, 4 p.m., end of the school year party. There's a weekly text study Wednesdays at 9 a.m., Rockies Brooklyn Basin. Kinder Gym, it has resumed. Let's see what else. Friday, May 13th, the Gan is closed. And, oh, next Saturday, it is the bar mitzvah of Ren and Pincus. Very exciting. I think those are the main announcements. If we have any guests, this would be a great time. I'll just call out Rachel. So my BFF Rachel's here. Hi, Rachel. She's visiting. This is maybe her third time here. Anybody else who would? Okay, go ahead. Sorry, can you say that again?
Hunter.
Hunter? Lily. Very nice to see you. Welcome. All right. So we're going to conclude with Hatikva on page 65. So this week it was Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut. Israel turned, anybody know? 74. That's right. Point to Anne in the back. So we rise, please. Page 65, Hatikva. Kol od ba'levav hanima nefesh Yehudi hodikva ufa'ate mizrach kadima ayin letzion Sophia od Be'artzenu Eretz Zion Yerushalayim Liotam Choshi Be'artzenu Eretz Zion Yerushalayim. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. That's your Baruch
Tieh.